Hey, how you doing? Hope this finds you doing well today. I am outside, cooling off. I've been in the kitchen, slaving away, making a no chicken soup for my vegetarian in the house, and turned out quite well, if I say so myself. I'm not the best cook, but anyway, as I was working, yes, I just did air quotes. Yeah, I know, it's fucking stupid. As I was working in the kitchen, I found myself thinking about a conversation I had earlier today with an old friend who lives on the other side of the country, and considering a job change, interviewed for the new job, and just doesn't know if it's right, and just needed to talk some stuff out, and really sort of wrestling with should I, shouldn't I, should I, shouldn't I. And as I was thinking about that conversation that I had with this very old friend of mine, it reminded me of another conversation I had recently with a client. Been seeing her for 6 weeks-ish, and she's considering getting a divorce, divorcing her husband after 15 years, I think it is. And she's really struggling with it, doesn't know what to do. And one of the things I had to tell her, just as an aside, one of the things I had to tell her is, talking to your cousin's husband, who is a patent lawyer in Kansas City, isn't the same as talking to a divorce lawyer in Manhattan, where she's a Manhattan client. I said, you need to talk to a Manhattan divorce lawyer just to get more information, just the information, right? And she's worried about finances, she's worried about how the divorce will go, she's worried about the kids, and she talks about how I want to be divorced, but I don't want to go through the divorce, and telling him, she's worried about a lot of things. I said, you have to get the information first. You got to talk to a divorce lawyer in Manhattan. You have to talk to a financial counselor in Manhattan who knows the laws, et cetera, et cetera. And I was thinking about that, and I was thinking about another client this year, and parents were immigrants and had been telling her entire life, she's probably 24-ish, had been telling her entire life that, she's got to be a doctor, got to be a doctor, got to be a doctor. And she's known her entire life since she was a child that she didn't want to be a doctor. And yet, she's on the cusp of making a major decision because she's been accepted to two, or was accepted at the time, to two of the top 5 medical schools in the country. And she found herself wrestling with, is now the time to tell my parents I have no desire to be a doctor, literally zero. It seems like death to me. It would be a prison to be a doctor, even though she clearly has the ability to get in. And she was monstrously depressed and had a lot of anxiety, and she was struggling with, should I tell them, should I not tell them, is this the time, what would they think, what would happen, all of the incumbent questions. Reminded me of another client I'd had a couple years ago, and this fellow, he was in his mid-50s, and he had built a company from scratch, and he had built it up to about a 8 or 10,000 employee company, uber successful company, and he had for years been wanting to get the fuck out. He loved it, it was his baby, but he just had other aspirations outside of business, some in infusing business, but in totally different directions, and he really wrangled with it for years before he ever even came to me. I was thinking about another kid as well. This one was quite young, 13, 12, whose parents brought him to me. Kid went to a very elite East Coast boarding school, preparatory school, whatever. And he had been no, it wasn't a boarding school, it was a preparatory school. But very, very, very elite. And his parents brought him to me because no one could figure out what was wrong with him. He had high anxiety, couldn't sleep, and something was clearly wrong. And no one at the school, the parents, no one, the doctors, no one could figure out what was wrong. And we worked together for a short amount of time, but even in the very first session, it was a 4-hour session. It came out that he was a lacrosse player, and it came out from the moment he got on the bus in the morning, got to school, went through the school today, went to lacrosse practice, rode the bus home, from the very moment the day started to the moment the day ended, he was being harassed and bullied by any one of 3 guys, 1 or 2 or 3 of these 3 guys, a couple of them who played on his lacrosse team. And from the moment he got on the bus in the morning, it was just constant bullying, really ugly stuff. I was thinking about him and potential medical student and the guy with the big company. I was thinking also about another client I'd had, 20 years ago. And this fellow was also in his early to mid 50s. He had been general counsel for a major US corporation, chief lawyer for their entire in-house legal department. And he was in his early 50s. And he said, Sven, I never wanted to go into law, but my old man made me. And my mom was complicit. She let him make me. She didn't stand up to him, even though she knew I didn't want to. And he had been wanting to get out, but he didn't know what he wanted to do. And we dug deeper and we worked together it didn't take that long. I don't know, a month. And then he came for another month after that. But we determined that he actually did know what he wanted to do. That way back to high school and college, he had always known what he wanted to do. And we talked it through, and he ended up making an extremely bold move. After putting 4 kids through college and being general counsel of a major US corporation, he left to become a 5th grade school teacher. He said, Sven, I've known since I was in college, but he had forgotten. He had gotten so caught up in the busyness and the rush and all of the crap. And he gave himself permission to walk away eventually and become a 5th grade teacher, do some retraining and so forth. And last I heard, a few years after that, he was in heaven. He was like a pig in shit. And so as I was making this vegetarian chicken soup, which I just laugh thinking about, I always swore I would never be in a relationship with a vegetarian. I would never allow a vegetarian under my roof. Certainly not a vegan, and she's almost a vegan. Because they're just so self-righteous, or something. And here I am 7 years later in a fantastic relationship with an amazing woman, and I eat a lot of vegetarian now myself, and I even take her to vegan restaurants. We have a great time. It's crazy how the gods fuck with us, right? Anyway, as I was making this soup, I found myself thinking about these particular different cases and one or two others, and the threads running through them. A couple of them in particular. One of the things that every single one of my clients hears me say at one time or another, or multiple times, is change will not occur until the pain gets bad enough. And pain comes in many forms: frustration, fatigue, anxiety, depression, anger, boredom, dissatisfaction, sadness. Pain has many forms, but as I will constantly tell couples, or someone who's in a relationship that's not fulfilling, I say, you don't have to make any change. There's no pressure. I said, but the truth is, this shit isn't gonna magically fucking fix itself. It's really not. And you won't do anything until your pain gets bad enough. And I guarantee you, your pain will get worse, because this shit doesn't heal itself. It's going to get worse. It's like God is trying to break your grip, or your own soul is trying to break your grip on this security you're holding on to, and is always trying to lead us to greater vistas, to higher ground, to more fulfilling life, but we so cling to that which is secure, as you've heard me say 1,000 times. And sometimes the pain has to get so bad before we're truly ready for it. And pain is an interesting thing. Pain is a powerful life changer insofar as when the pain finally does get bad enough. You know, change will not occur until the pain gets bad enough. When it finally does get bad enough, we have the courage to do today what just yesterday we were too afraid to do. Maybe we were afraid of hurting someone, or maybe we were afraid of the ramifications, maybe we were afraid of what people would think. Whatever it was, all the fears of making the change, now, on this day, when the pain has finally gotten so bad that you just say, fuck it. It's what I call the fuck it point. I've written about it in my last book, There's a Hole in My Love Cup. I talk about the fuck it point, where you reach the point where the pain has gotten so bad that you just say, fuck it. All the shit that I was afraid of after the decision or in making the decision, now that I've come over the fuck it point, I'm no longer afraid of, because the pain of staying in it has gotten infinitely worse than the shit I used to fear, and I don't even fear it anymore. I don't even fucking care. I need to get out of this situation, whether it's a marriage or a relationship or a friendship or a geography or a job, whatever. So that's one of the things that I found myself reflecting on today, that thread ran through all of them. But there's another one. There's another one, and this came up in my conversation with my old friend today. Just a beautiful man. Beautiful man. I said to him, you know, my father told me a story from his early life when he was about 25. He was going to seminary at the time in Rock Island, Illinois. Augustana Seminary is a Lutheran, Swedish Lutheran seminary. And he was there, and two of his brothers were there at the time, one of them, two of them, whatever. And he had traveled, and he had been seeing a gal for some time, and he traveled back up to the family homestead way up in northern Minnesota, Hallock, Minnesota, about 10, 15, whatever miles from the Canadian border. And up there, my grandfather had 1,600 acres that they had farmed, Depression, World War II, and now it's roughly 1953-ish, somewhere in there, 54, somewhere in there. And he traveled back up to the family farm. And he tells the story that he was in the kitchen, sitting at the kitchen table with his mother. And she was chopping and cutting and preparing and boiling and baking in preparation for the next meal to feed the family, feed the farmers and feed the workers and so forth. And he was in talking with his mom. And in my parents' home, in my father's home growing up, they spoke Swedish. Not exclusively, but largely, because his grandparents, my great-grandparents, had come over from Sweden. And so that was sort of the lingua franca of the Erlandson farm. I got a plane going over, so this is a good time to take another sip of my cocktail. Helicopter. Anywho, so he's sitting in the kitchen, at the kitchen table, and Grandma, his mother, is over at the counter chopping. She has her paring knife in her hand. He told the story. And he said, likely in Swedish, possibly English, whatever, but likely in Swedish, he said, and I don't know the Swedish for how he said it, so I'll just say it in English, but he said, "Mom, how do you know when the girl is the one? How do you know?" And Grandma put down the paring knife and turned to him, rested her arm, her frame on the counter, looked him in the eye, and said, "Du vet. Du vet." She turned, picked up her paring knife, and went back to work. And that story stuck with my father. I remember him telling me that many, many years ago, decades ago. And it stuck, and I wrote about it in my last book. And it's the thread that runs through all of these stories I just told you about. The kid being bullied, who was able to verbalize to me that he was being bullied, but it took him weeks before he was ready to actually act on it. The gentleman who became a 5th grade teacher, the one who wanted to get out of this giant company he had built, the woman considering divorcing her husband, my friend today, the potential medical student who was not sure if she should tell her parents, terrified to tell them, to disappoint them, to anger them. The thread running through all of them, and the story I told them is this story of Du vet. Swedish. Mom, when do you know when the girl is the right one? Du vet. You'll know. I think about that a lot. And I've lived it in my own life. And I teach it to my clients. Talked about it with my friend today, that we so want to know now. We so want to take an action now. My friend today, he wanted to know now if they were going to offer him the position. He wanted to figure out right now, so should I take it? Should I not take it? And we force it. We so want to know. We try to, quote, figure it out. But there's shit in life you can't figure out. There's shit in life where you can run through it mentally and run through it mentally and run through it mentally, but then you have to let it go and trust that when the time is right, the answer will come. If you believe in God, it means that when God will give it to you when it's time, and you will know. If you don't believe in God, your own gut, your own intuition, when the time is right, you will know. And knowing is different from believing. Knowing is different from thinking I might, or thinking I should, or thinking I will. Knowing is an altogether different animal. When you know what your calling is in life, when you know what you don't want anymore, when you know who it is you want to be with, when you know what you want to be doing next, when you know, it's this thing, it's this sense of calm inside, in this sense of, and this is what it is, clarity. There is no ambiguousness, there is no nebulous wondering or still trying to sort it out or figure it out. In fact, the words figure it out are catchwords for me in my own life. If I ever find myself, and this is just me, I'm not forcing this on anyone else, but for me, if I ever find myself using the words, I got to figure it out, or I should, those are two trigger phrases for me. That's when I stop. If I'm trying to figure out, it's me trying to force an answer. And when I do that, that's when I stop and I go through my meditations and I journal about it and I let it go. And rather than trying to figure out anymore, I trust that when the time is right, I'll know. When the time is right, I'll have clarity and it will be calm inside. But no amount of inner wrangling and permutations in my head and the tumbling of everything in my brain like a fucking dryer, clothes dryer. None of that is going to solve the equation. It's really not. There is a point where we let it go and we trust that the answer will come. We trust that du viet. And I really believe in this. The kid who was being bullied, he verbalized it to me, something that he had never verbalized to anyone, but he wasn't ready to speak up about it. And I honored his request that I not tell his parents yet. And they asked me to honor his request going in, all right? So they wanted that. They wanted him to have total confidence in me and confidentiality. The medical student, or the one who was considering medical school, she had the courage to stand up to her parents because we had the du viet conversation. And she realized, Sven, it's time. I've wasted so much of my fucking life. And I'm so afraid, but I have to do this. I know it's time. And that's ballsy shit. That's standing up to the most powerful power source in your life. It's usually a parent. The guy knew he had to become a teacher. I'm not going to waste any more life. Sven, I see year after year slipping away doing this job that I'm very good at it, but I don't enjoy, which parenthetically is why I always counsel kids, don't go into a career that you're good at simply because you're good at it. And I counsel parents, don't encourage your children to do that which they're good at. Encourage them to do that which they love, or that which excites them. Even if they change course later, if you just do what you're good at, I have tons of people who are my clients who are extremely good at what they do, and they fucking miserable people. And until they let go of what they're good at to go after what they really love, they'll continue to be miserable people. My friend today, he'll know. When the answer is right, he'll know. And when we were talking about it, he's like, fuck, you're right, Sven. You're right. You'll know. So what are you wrangling over? What are you trying to force a decision on? What do you not know that is that you're impatient over and I want to know and I want to know and I want to know? What is it? What decision are you trying to force or need more information on? Have you gathered all the information? Are you trying to solve an equation in your head that you're still waiting on more information on, or that you need to go and get more information on, like seeing that divorce lawyer in Manhattan with that one client? Or what do you have the information on, but you're still you stay up at night or get waking up in the middle of the night and you keep thinking about it? What's the decision you're trying to force? What is it? You already know. You fucking know. When I already started talking about this, you knew what it was. So the question is, do you have the courage to let it go? See, we're so conditioned to believe that I got to think about it more, I got to think about it, and somehow I think that we call it worry, or we call it stress, we call it anxiety, but it's just thinking about shit more and more. And I'm not necessarily against overthinking. I don't believe people overthink. That's not what I'm talking about per se. I don't think overthinking is necessarily a bad thing. That's not what this is. This is anxiety. This is forcing something. And forcing a decision, forcing anything in life is different from being in flow. I had a client who was a professional gambler. You've seen him on TV. This was years ago. And he said, Sven, when I sit down at a table, I know when I'm forcing it. I know, to use your words, Sven, I know my energy. And I know my intuition. And I know when I'm forcing it. And I can see it in my play. And I can see it in the results. But I just so want the win. So I force it. And he says, and then there are times where I know I'm just in flow. And he said, and one of the biggest challenges for me, Sven, and it has monetary consequences, one of the biggest challenges for me is to walk away when I know I'm forcing decisions, forcing a situation. Well, it's the same way in your life. The more you try to force that shit, get the decision, because you're so impatient. We so want to know right now. And no one's more guilty of this. I know this shit from personal experience, all right? That notion of forcing decisions, I want something, I want it to happen now. But letting go of it and trusting. Call it the spirit of the universe, call it God, call it your own soul, call it luck, call it life, whatever the fuck, call it Mickey Mouse. I don't fucking care. whatever you call it. It's this notion, trusting that when the time is right, you'll know. There will be a clarity that you've never experienced before in your life, or rarely experienced before in your life. But having a decision in your hand is like having water in your hand. The more you tighten your grip on that water in your hand, you know, if it was full and I tried to tighten my grip on it and make it, force it, it's gonna squirt out my fingers. Same way with fucking major decisions. And when you get really good at this shit, listening to your energy, letting go of decisions, even while you simultaneously want it, but letting go of needing it or needing it to happen now, the better you get at it, you're able to do it not just in the big decisions, but in the medium decisions and even in the small decisions. And this is part of what it means to be a spiritual, you know, to live a spiritual life. It's in the words, the immortal words of that great fucking 70s rock group and song, 38 Special, to hold on loosely. To hold on to that which you want, but to hold on loosely. And to not try to force it. And to trust that the moment will come when du wird. You'll know. So I challenge you to identify in your life that which you're trying to force, that which you're wanting an answer for right now, that you're impatient about. I'm challenging you to identify it and then to let it go, trusting that the moment will come. And maybe it's the fuck it point when the pain has gotten so bad. Maybe it's some other point, but the point will come where you will have absolute clarity and know not only what you need to do, but that you can do it, that you have the strength within you and the courage to do it. And you'll take that deep breath. All right, let's go. Let's do it. That moment will come. But it's trusting. When the time is right, du wird. You'll know. So, that being said, that major life problem being fixed, thank you, you're welcome, go fuck yourself. And the chicken soup being done, the whiskey being poured, I'm a happy man, and I hope your life is getting better. Have a totally fucking monster day, remainder to your day, beginning of your day, whatever it is. Have a kick-ass one, and I look forward to seeing you again. Skål.